I am Jason Myers from the band Icarus Witch, and you are listening to the Crash Course Metal Show, featuring Trevor Crash Knight, the next generation's voice of classic heavy metal.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Crash Course Metal Show. We got a very special interview and guest here today. We got none other than Mr. Joel Ellis from Cats and Boots, Heavy Bones, and other projects as well. What is going on, my man?
How's it going, Crash?
I want to thank you again, man, for coming on the show, talking some, good rock and metal, and even giving some stories here, giving some advice for other rockers, and I just want to thank you again for coming on the show.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I dig your show, actually.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. So we can just jump right into it here. For viewers and listeners that are unaware of who Joel is, can you kind of give a little bit of a background on who you are?
Who am I? Well, I'm a guy that used to have better vision. But I'm a scrappy kid who grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, during some pretty exciting eras. And I grew up through the heyday of the late 60s, 70s as a child, going to concerts, and then I hit the strip with both feet running on Sunset Boulevard and back in the early 80s. I had a high school band. I don't know how common this is. Maybe it's more common than others, but I had a high school band, and at the time we were called Rage. And so it's just a bunch of us. We used to play keg parties and the high school auditorium and things like that. So when I came out to LA, those guys followed me a few years later, and we were all piled into a little 1-bedroom suite in the Hollywood area. And like 2 months after we were actually in Orange County. We were recording our own demos over and over again. We were on these little machines, and we made our own cassette tapes. Mm-hmm. And then we moved up to Hollywood, and we were living in a seedy area, Cahuenga in Franklin, it was the Police Beat 666 area, and but it was the coolest area. It was just so bohemian and crime ridden. It was funny. But yeah, you had to, we lived in an apartment where there was a skyscraper across the street, and they had a lot of Honduran and Guatemalan immigrants up there that would come to do work, but they'd all get drunk on the rooftop late at night, and they'd get hammered and shoot their guns off. And so we'd have to sit there and listen to see which direction the bullets were bouncing. So we'd figure out where to position, what windows we wanted to, put them. But anyways, that band, we were in Hollywood, and we passed out our tapes, and it wasn't more than 2 months, and we had a deal on Atlantic, and it was a good thing. I mean, I initially went out there, and I did a lot of cool stuff at first. I was like, okay, I put myself through college. I got a college degree in engineering and physics, and in order to put myself through college, I actually landed a sweet job being a chauffeur for a mob boss who took me all around through Beverly Hills, and it was crazy, man. I had one night Stevie Wonder would come sit with me, or we'd be battling for the one limousine parking spot in front of the thing with Prince's limo, the purple thing with big white. Well, and then we'd be up at the Playboy Mansion, and I'd be carting several nondescript ladies around for the family, and but that's cool because I got to be good friends with Hefner, and okay. We had good times. But then after that, the band came out and met me, and we made our little cassette tapes, and we'd go out at night, and we'd just go hit the clubs and go to the Rainbow, and the Rainbow was insanity back then in the 80s. I'm sure you've heard it a million times, but I mean, from about 100 feet down the sidewalk, all the way up through the door. I mean, it was literally shoulder to shoulder. you moved like traffic on the freeway in LA. But and yeah, it was just an amazing time. But we just passed our tapes and we started getting phone calls from people like Gene Simmons, you know, I loved your songs, or produce you guys. And my guitarist spilled his beer on the tape machine, and so we, you know, we lost his number, but later they found us, and then we got to meet Dweezil and the guys in Rat and Great White and all these, and suddenly we were in the mix with Motley and everybody. But um yeah, I went, I'm just, you know, a guy from the Midwest who followed my dreams, and I believed in everything. So you know, I grew up in a rough neighborhood, in a rough area, a rough town, in a rough time. So music pretty much saved me from being a casualty like many of my other friends who either ended up dead or in jail. So music saved my ass, and I stayed on that path my whole life until today.
Good, good. So, and then speaking of today, though, can you kind of let us or tell us about the new, I guess, release that you did here with the Real Heavy Bones? Now, I seen it was supposed to come out in January. Did it officially get released then in January, this past January?
Yeah. So, okay, message to the fans. There's a lot of people that have been waiting a long time, very patiently, some of you, for this record to get done. And it was a huge undertaking. So to immediately answer your question, yes, the record was released in January on the 29th on Leap Day with the first single, Bad Little Bobby Blue, which is kind of ironic because I wrote the song decades ago, but now it's even more relevant because it's about um, school youths, gun violence, and you know, all the peer pressure and how it starts at home and poor parenting, and you know, yeah, it was officially released on January 29th, and with the single Bad Bob Bobby. So you can get the single, it's, if you search Heavy Bones or the Real Heavy Bones. So that was kind of a confusing thing because the label group is Denny Sanders and the label group are marketing my music, and it was just like, well, you know, we want a meta tag. The big meta tag is Heavy Bones, and now you're releasing almost like a new record, which is the Real Heavy Bones. And so we have to, you know, make it, the meta tag match the name, or the name on the cover match that, or and so it's a little bit confusing, but you'll find it out there. It's on, what is it, SoundCloud, and I don't.
Yep. Spotify and
Spotify, is that it? Okay. That's what we pay people for.
But then again, you might have some issues with some people don't use Spotify though anymore. I mean, or never did. I mean, there's some people that still do the physical stuff, and we're happy that you did give us a choice between vinyl and CD. I saw there's both are available for the release.
Right. You know what? And okay, so first of all, you know, this is my first endeavor doing this without the major label. So I have one more record coming out with Warner Music Group, and that is the reissue. I'm doing a very special reissue. And yeah, and the Heavy Bones, the debut on Reprise, the first record, there's too much music to put on a vinyl record, and so it would have to be a double vinyl set, and then there's not enough exactly for a double vinyl set, and so it's very expensive to do. So so that's probably why the record was never released on vinyl, but I plan to do it because I am in possession of bonus tracks.
Okay.
So I've been working on that, but it's like I said, this is really cumbersome, so it's been a learning curve. It's the first time that I've done something without a label, and I have immense respect that I'm not sure if I had in the past, but I have immense respect for the record companies and what they're able to do. You know, but when you step out on your own especially when you're a name artist or a pro artist, that major label artist, and then you try to take that task on yourself. You know, it's enormous because it's like just right around every turn. It's like climbing Mount Everest, and then when you get to the peak, you realize, you know, you've got, and you just keep going, you know, and So yeah, it's been a big learning curve for me, which has caused delays. And then a lot of the other delays are things that are out of my control.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't really truly realize how many legalities are involved. And, you know, I've got 3 law firms, and I try not I try not to pay them. So I try to get as much done as I can, or as much as I should. But there's some things you can't get around because, unfortunately, in our world, I know identity theft is one thing, but you know, pirating music and bootlegging and things that's been going on for a long time, and it's really not right, because people who are out there stealing an artist's music, they're killing the music industry. Because if the
100%.
artist can't make money to survive, and that's why a lot of artists that were, it's like for me, like Cats and Boots was like, our signing deal was like $2.8 million. And then with Heavy Bones, it was like that was originally offered to me as a blank, you know, as a, blank check. And, you know, then Heavy Bones got $500,000 to just make the record, and spend every penny of it. But it's just, you never expect to see that money back again if you're going to spend it, because you've got to pay that money back. And so, but at least it allowed artists to be able to make music and get it out there. But nowadays, it's like the artist has to come up with that whole signing bonus margin, and pay for the manufacturing and the design. And oh my God, it's just, and the production, I mean, studio production is through the roof. And if you want to really make a great record, like for instance, for this record, it was a lot more involved, because the tapes, the music, it originated on some old tapes that only fit one recording machine. It was a Tascam 388.
Okay.
And so I had to find, they don't make them anymore. And I had to find one, and I had to find one that worked, and I had to find one really well, because I'm getting ready to make a record with it. And I did. And then I drove my car halfway across the country. I drove, you know, from Portland down to LA, where I was living temporarily for the time. But I went all the way down to South Orange County to pick this machine up, and then had to pay to have it tweaked and then dialed in, and then get the tapes in there and have the tapes digitized, and the whole engineering digitizing, which was done by Dan Johnson in Burbank. Brilliant guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then that just gave me the music straight off the tape in digital form. And then I had to actually drive my car, which the machine fit in the trunk of my little, you know, BMW that I had. And I drove it across country to Cleveland, where I'm at, to the studio where I'm working with my production partner, Mike. And all these things are just so time consuming and expensive. They're just little peripheral expenses that you see. But then the production time to get into it, the deeper we got into the production of mixing and remixing these tapes, the more we realized how great we could make this record without changing the performance at all.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Mike, he's a studio owner, so he gets a lot of clients that come in and have him, you know, engineer or produce whatever. But he's constantly, like a lot of engineers will tell you, they're constantly using like auto tune, and, you know, having to move things around and get them quantized and all that. And but he's just said it's amazing that this recording is just you guys in rehearsals with no cuts, just captured live in one take, and it's perfect. You know, we had no auto tune. You know, the drums come through, of course, because Frankie was like Thunderfoot, and he would always say, you know, I play my drums like they owe me money. And and you know, we just sounded that good. And these recordings captured it, because we just did it with a few microphones in our own pre-production rehearsal place. But once we realized what we had, I've never really been fond of the digital process until this record, truly. You know, automated mix boards were cool, but then you're talking about recording digital. It's a completely different thing. I'm an analog guy. I grew up an analog kid, listening to Dark Side of the Moon and, you know, whatever. I mean, all that stuff. The good. But so once we realized, that, okay, well, wow, we can actually, Mike was a brilliant engineer and he eliminated all the ambient noise in the track so that you're actually, instead of actually being in a controlled studio environment and capturing a kick drum, with gates around it with no, silence, he recreated that by actually going in and digitally removing the sound in rehearsals where you hear the pedal squeaking or you hear the bleed over from the guitar. So he actually did that. And so we recreated like a full studio production sound.
Okay.
And yeah.
Very
And
cool. Because I heard one song, I think, and then a couple little clips of others, and it sounds really good. Like I understand what you're saying because it doesn't sound like just straight up like raw demos or it sounds better than that. It actually sounds like something that you guys kind of were meaning to put out, and the sound quality is really good as well.
thank you. Yeah. You know what? It is a great record, and I'm gonna say that proudly because we busted my ass to make this record.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm gonna recoup on this record unless I sell 30 million copies. So you guys go and start buying the record. Come on,
Yeah, come on, go make it go platinum. Let's go.
I mean, seriously, you got to support it because I've got 3 other volumes to do. I've got the reissue, and then I've got volume 2 is going to be songs that we didn't have on volume 1. We've got like 60 songs to pick from.
Okay.
And so it's a really difficult choice. What are we going to put on volume 1? We've got to pick the songs. We very carefully choose these songs because what happens if a helicopter hits me in the head and we never make it, we never make it to volume 2. Volume 3 is going to be really unique because I had that 388 machine up in my notorious Fuller apartment, and it was there, and there were constantly musicians. I couldn't even begin to name you everybody that was there, and that tape machine was always rolling, and we've got some crazy stuff. There were recordings where people were doing acid and drinking, not acid, but eating shrooms, and we're recording crazy stuff. And there's times when we're serious and we've got some really great name players in there, and we're just recording ideas. And a lot of that, wow, man, just a lot of that ambient fun kind of bled into. Tammy lived down the hall from me. Piercy was my roommate. Eric Moore from the Gods. Mitch Perry lived down the hall, guitarist. And there were always people dropping in from just about any band you can imagine. And somebody appears on some part of the record at some point in time. So through that, I'm curious to see what else is on these tapes and what we can pull out of it. But volume 3, these 3 volumes, these 60 songs, they're pretty much the songs that ended up going into the Heavy Bones sessions, even though the majority of them didn't make the record or didn't even get onto the Warner Brothers contract. We recorded them in the rehearsal environment, and we recorded them ourselves on that machine. But volume 3, I think, is just going to be more of a collection of a lot of the beautiful mistakes, let's say, expect a lot of outtakes. But the first 2, the first one that's out now is volume 1. And I, you're right. I'm not sure if I've ever said this about any of my other records, but I think it sounds phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. From what I heard, it sounds really good. I was quite impressed with it because, as other people kind of had this idea and tried to do this as well, like bring out old stuff just to get it out there and released and stuff. And some of them don't sound that good, and it's not that pleasing to the ear. It's not really worth listening to. But like this, I was quite impressed with your output here with the Heavy Bones. So I'm certainly want to add it to my Heavy Bones collection here. No doubt about that. But since I kind of want to ask just a couple questions about this album. In 1992, you guys released the Heavy Bones album here. Is there one of these tracks or one of the tracks out on the Heavy Bones album that you wish wasn't on the debut album here that you thought, hey, which obviously most of them do end up are going to be on these volume 1, 2, and 3s? Is there one that was kind of like on the debut you just didn't like?
Not, you know what? There's not a song I don't like. I kind of wish that, because there's a lot of great, you're going to hear a lot of the great heavy songs.
Yes.
And a lot of the really, there's a song that's a bonus track on volume 1. And we also found in a pre-production 8-track mix that we're going to reproduce, but it's a song called For You, My Queen. And the thing of it is that we really played from our hearts, which meant that some of the songs were 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes,
Yeah.
And so we really didn't think about, crafting hit snappy songs. We played a song, and so there's a lot of songs. So what I think, it's interesting that you asked that, because songs that I wish weren't on the record, I wish that there were different songs.
Okay.
And I think that, that there were different songs that I wish would have been on that first record as opposed to others.
Mhm.
I don't think there's a single song on the debut that I think shouldn't have been put on there.
Okay.
There's some I think in terms of time wise, on the record, it's a very long record. So
Yeah,
I mean,
12 tracks. That's pretty long.
It is, and they're not short songs. But there are some things that I do have kind of regrets about, and I made up for it in this one. Like, one example is, obviously, so we could have done without a couple of things, like maybe The Living Is Easy and Enormo Dome, and slipped in For You, My Queen.
Okay.
It's a phenomenal, epic song, but now I've got it. I've got the original demo that we did in the apartment, and then on volume 2 we'll have the reproduced version. But Summers in the Rain, it was in the beginning, Gary and I, when we first started getting together, it was kind of more under, let's see if we work well together kind of thing. And I was kind of still in a footloose phase there. And so he would basically just come over and follow me around with an acoustic guitar and play until I said, wait, what was that? And he'd be like, this? And I'd be like, yeah. And we'd sit down and write a song. So the first 3 songs we wrote are very acoustic. I wouldn't necessarily say ballady, but they're acoustic. So the first that we came up with was Summers in the Rain. And Summers in the Rain is a great song. I love it. It's one of my favorite songs I've ever written, but I love the demo version because it's just got this, I don't know, it's just got this little bit of a creepy vibe, but it's very, it's just really raw. Yep. And the song sways and moves, with the lyric and everything else, and the guitar melody. But then when we took it into the studio, everyone agreed, yeah, it's a great song, let's do it. But we took it in the studio. The record was recorded to a click track, and then I did all my own vocal doubling, and I did all my own background vocals. Gary and I sang all the background vocals for all the demos and all this stuff. But then they brought in, a group of people that were strangers. We didn't even know who they were. And so they kind of sterilized the song.
Right.
Summers in the Rain is a cool song, but to me, it just lost all its soul on the debut record.
Okay.
Whereas if you listen to the version that I've got on this record, you're like, holy fuck, that's a kick-ass fucking song, because the nuances in there, it's like, wow, it gives you chills. So that was the first song we wrote. And then the next song I think that we came out with was Anna. Okay, and Gary and I referred to Anna as our little girl. But he would just one day just play down, and I go, what is that?
Yeah.
The lyrics just boom, it just came. I wrote it about an ex-girlfriend of mine at the time.
It's an amazing song. That is a standout song for me. Like, as you know, I have the Heavy Bones album on one of my forgotten albums episodes. And man, it's been a part of my life like the last 15 years. It's so good. And cool. And I like what you said about everyone was heartfelt in writing these songs and playing these songs, because I hear that, because every song, there's not one song that's the same. There's throughout this album, each song has its own life to it, own personality, if you will. And like, there's real heavy stuff that you would expect from 1992, and the sleaze hair metal style things. But like you said, there's also acoustic stuff here. Every song has a personality, and I think that's what I really, really like about this album, and that's why it stands the test of time for me. Anyway, it stands the test of time. So I just wanted to say that about this album.
No, I appreciate that, because I mean, you're spot on about that. Cats and Boots, we got together and we were just a melded unit that just boom, and we exploded live on stage. And we were Cats and Boots was, it was all inclusive. It was the all omnipotent wild ass. Yeah. That's that the band. It was just amazing. We could talk forever about. It was just what an experience it was to just be a member and to be Joel Ellis in Cats and Boots and to work with Takashi Ohashi and Butch and Randy. This is just phenomenal. And then to be able to break during that momentous time when Japan was just waking up.
Yeah, yes.
And we had carte blanche to do whatever we wanted as an American wild ass singer, because I had 2 Japanese guitar players, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And they could do anything they wanted that would normally get them arrested, because it's not us, it's the Americans, And we were making money, and we had, we were moving 50,000 units a month, but anyways, yeah, but as opposed to Cats and Boots and just, having this unified entity, and I mean that the music, the record was recorded live. Most of those songs were just recorded, and tracked kind of the way this record that I'm doing. It wasn't anything like the Heavy Bones record, but yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I really wanted to focus on the songwriting, and that's the reason why I decided to work with Gary, was because he had the ability to be able to take what I was thinking in my mind, what I was feeling, what I was thinking, and he could turn it into a key or a mode or a chord change or something, anything, well, let me try to move this one. I will make it a G7 demolished. And, and it would be like, that's exactly what I'm feeling. So, and I looked at every song, we got into the record writing, and I realized when you said every song has its own personality, when we wrote Anna and we called it Our Little Girl, I had an epiphany, and I said, it's kind of crazy, because songs are like kids, it's like, not to sound weird, but it's like, Gary, we're having kids together. It wasn't like that. No, but yeah, it's like you get you get this concept, you get this attraction to a concept, to a creation, and then you develop it into something, it becomes a melody, it becomes words, it develops, it grows, just like a fetus or whatever. And then eventually, you pop out a song and it's a baby, right? It's a demo. And then, the demo starts to grow up. It goes through different phases. Let's redo the demo. Let's bring in Frankie now and have him put his drums on a demo. And okay, let's do that. Let's take it into the rehearsal room. So every phase is kind of like a phase of growing up, you go from your conception to your, the birth of the song, the demo. He's a baby, a child, it grows up, and eventually, you're in the studio and you record this great song, and it's like, your child graduates college, and you set it out there in the world, to see what she'll do. And and so it's funny that you say that, because songs are, for artists, for true artists creating, songs are like your kids, and it kind of goes hand in hand with where they say that, a band is like a marriage,
Yeah. That's totally understandable. Same thing with like going into business with people. It's kind of the same deal. It's like a marriage. And so yeah, that I want to ask this too. What was it like playing with Frankie? Like, was that like groundbreaker for you as a fellow artist and musician? Was it like, can you just kind of like, for people that aren't aware, Frankie was the drummer of Quiet Riot. That's where he, like, everyone knows him from. But like, what was it like playing with Frankie?
I didn't really know Frankie from the famous drummer of Quiet Riot aspect. I met Frankie, and really, I don't think I ever really realized when I heard those songs that it was Quiet Riot. I really listened. I really didn't listen to a lot of 80s music until the guys became my friends, or I learned, oh, I can respect them for that.
Mhm.
I grew up, I was a little kid in the 60s, and I grew up through the 70s. I mean, I was spoiled rotten when it comes to creativity. I mean, I remember being a teenager and being up against the stage and touching Freddie Mercury's foot, while they, Queen was performing, Tie Your Mother Down. And I remember the Genesis Seconds Out tour and Zeppelin and Pink Floyd concerts and the Rolling Stones. It's incredible. I mean, so in the 80s, I wasn't impressed. There were certain bands that I really dug. Like, okay, this is fresh. Like, I knew Van Halen because they were already, by the time I got to Hollywood, they were already huge.
Right. Yep.
And I hadn't been friends with Eddie yet, but I was completely in love with Van Halen from record one, like everyone else, up until Van Hagar. That's but then I came this close to actually getting in the band.
Okay.
Eddie and I were hanging, and he thought it would be a great idea, if I came in front of the band. But there were only two problems. One of them was, that I had already signed with Warner Brothers, but that wouldn't have stopped me. But the other one was more powerful than Warner Brothers and all the lawyers in the music industry, and that was Valerie, Ed's wife. And she wasn't going to stand. She was going to stand for me being in the band because we were too toxic together. But and rightly so. But anyways, things happened the way they did. But the thing is that Motley Crue, upon first listen, I mean, when I was in Hollywood, the first thing I heard, about Motley Crue was, some waitresses at one of the clubs were like, oh, they were arguing over, we're telling stories about how, oh yeah, we got banged by the band and we had fun and they're playing here and everything's great. And there's shit the Roxy in the early 80s. And then, so then, I heard their music. It's like, holy shit, this is really, really, this is exciting stuff because you can feel the passion and what's going on.
Yeah.
And like with a lot of different bands, that all of a sudden there's like a wagon train of new bands that come in that try to be like them. And every version of that one is influenced by the one before them, and eventually it just gets very watered down. In the 80s was just a big cesspool of watered down bands trying to be like that. And so it was really crisp and fresh, when you heard a band. And like, I think one of the biggest travesties is the story of the band London,
Right.
Nader DePriest, his band London. They were amazing. I mean, Nader and Izzy, they, Nader was one of my first buddies. But so I didn't really, I remember, I'll never, forget, one of the first experiences was London playing at the Troubadour, and I was hanging out with Nader, and he was wearing these like lizard skin, lime green fluorescent spandex pants, and just this wild. And I was like, this is cool. And we were way upstairs in the Troubadour, and we're looking out the window, and we're picking out girls. We're throwing bottle caps and things down. I hit them in the head. Hey, come on up. This and that. Everybody's lined up waiting to get in, and we're up in the in the rafters of the Troubadour and just chilling. But so that's how I learned my introduction to the 80s, because I wasn't at that time, I wasn't a kid at home, buying 80s bands records at the record store and listening and going to see them live. I was actually a part of the scene already.
Right.
And so, but I got to be friends with a lot of bands, and I heard bands that were fresh. I thought Rat they had such a sultry sound. Steven's approach to songwriting and his vocals, everything was very sultry and inside of the midst of this, this raw. So I thought that there's character, there's artistry in there. You can see it,
Right.
and the same thing with Motley Crue. They were just like, I was like, yeah, I love that. And, I got to, Great White, another one, Jack Russell, to this day, I love him, man. He's a great buddy of mine. But, so that kind of respect that I had for 80s bands became like a camaraderie of friendship, and these musicians became part of my life. I wasn't starstruck by Frankie being in Quiet Riot. Frankie and I became friends because first of all, we met, and he was one of my very first friends in Hollywood. And when I got there in the early 80s, and we hung out, and he was just for some reason, we just clicked. We became friends. And several people have said, well, how did you get to be friends with Frankie Banali? He's a hard person to get close to. But I said, we did. We bonded. And then especially when I was in Japan, I mean, it would be like afternoon for me, and wake him up in the morning like, Frankie, and he collected Japanese swords. He was really into Japanese culture. So Frankie and I were just good buddies. And Frankie wasn't necessarily the kind of guy that you'd see out at the Rainbow, hanging with strippers and doing dope and things like that. He just wasn't one of those guys. And so I think that that real grounded intellect that Frankie had, and his seriousness to his art. And so I would listen to him, and it reminded me a lot of, I was also very good friends with Dweezil. I am friends with Dweezil Zappa and Frank Zappa. In fact, I owe a lot to them. Frank Zappa actually, secured us our deal on EMI for Cats and Boots. And so all you Cats and Boots fans can thank the Zappa family for that. There was, Frank was a very, I don't know, not, like a sober guy. I mean, cigarettes and coffee, but, he wasn't, no drugs. And I think that what attracted me to Frankie in that sense was his seriousness. And I noticed at that point in time, it was artists like Frankie and Frank Zappa and Dweezil and guys like that. You see Steve Vai, people like that, that were actually, their drug was their art, their craft.
Right.
It wasn't that where the 80s took off. Chris Squire of Yes was also one of my closest friends. And the level of artistry that went into the 70s it'll never be, there's no way it could ever be recaptured. And all of that was kind of just getting thrown against the wall in the 80s, and everybody just, went to hell in a handbag with access. But it's really different from what happened in the 70s, because those guys were artists, they were crafting, and they went out of their way to innovate themselves in different directions and become unique by their sound, not by the name that had, was branded into something that can be marketed like the 80s. And there's a lot of bands that were like that, where you've got, whether it's great music or semi-great music or not great music, it all kind of runs the homogenous kind of path. I mean, I love the guys in Poison, but there's not a whole lot of, musicality fluctuating in there. Same thing with, like, I love the guys in Warrant, and it's not happening. There's several bands like that. And every once in a while you get a band that just blows you out of the water, like Faith No More. It's like, well, the way Mike's approached his performing and his singing, it's like, okay, so I'm not wrong. There are artists, but then there's a difference between an artist and a musician who's being marketed, and there are artists. And so Frankie was like that to me, and we became really close friends over the years. And I love the big songs, like Mental Health Will Drive You Mad and all that stuff. But I listen to it now after I've known Frankie. I go back and listen to it, and I can really appreciate it. You're in a grocery store, and I hear, and I'm like, that's fucking Frankie. I know that kick drum. I know that snare. I know exactly. Yep, he's going to go to that bill. He's going to do that. Yep, that's him. And so that's where I really enjoy it. But to be able to, so the way that it happened is that Frankie and I really established a bond when I was in Cats and Boots, because I was in Japan. And Frankie was so deeply immersed in Japanese culture, and in particular things like kendo. I don't know if you realize, where they fight with the wooden sword. And they have the samurai and this and that. And so I mean, and when we were on tour in Cats and Boots, and the first tour, that's what we did. We spent as much time, as a band, we spent just as much time going through, like, all the Shogun castles and going to all the unique areas. We climbed through the bamboo forest 20 feet above the ground, like we're on stilts. We did all that stuff at the foot of Mount Fuji. We did just the craziest stuff. We we hung out with the Yakuza assassins, and we really absorbed all of Japan. And I would always call Frankie and let him know what's going on. I was like, oh yeah, we're doing this and that. He didn't mind being woken up at 3, 4 in the morning. I'm like, what time is it there? Well, it's 4 in the morning. I was like, okay, but the cool thing is that, you knew you could always find him because he was home. He was home.
Right.
He was doing his thing, and he was, taking care of his health and his body, and taking care of his mind and his art and his craft. And so all of those things, the bond we shared and everything I knew about Frankie. And I think I remember, I think I was on a flight with him or something. I think I was on a plane with him. We were going to Minneapolis because he decided he was gonna, the night before, Faster Pussycat asked him if he'd fill in for their drummer. And so he was with us, and I flew with them. I think I flew with them to, boy, man, there's memories like Swiss cheese. But I remember him having a Walkman, the old cassette Walkman, and and he had a pair of sticks in his hand and sitting on the plane next to him, and he's learning the songs, and he's playing the drums, with the sticks, and he's learning the songs on the way to the gig. And he played a full set. It was like, he's like, I found it, and I got on a flight, and he learned their entire set like in a matter of hours. Wow. And then I remember him playing in Wasp when he got the gig in Wasp. And one of the records that he was most proud of was the Hughes Thrall record. And we played with Pat Hughes, and and so, I mean, I think that was the first record of Frankie's that I actually really listened to his playing. And I think, up until Heavy Bones, I knew it was the greatest record he played. And of course, I'm not to take anything away from the Quiet Riot stuff, but because, I mean, there's no other drummer, just like Bonham could have never, well, also Frankie was renowned for being the Bonham, but he could, he Bonham like Bonham. And, it's crazy. It's kind of, it's strange how, you meet these guys, but it's like, Frankie basically was Bonham. And just like Robert Plant said about Jack Russell, he's just like, Jack Russell's more like me than I do. I mean, it's not hard to hide our influences and our passions. But yeah, so initially what happened was Cats and Boots should have never broken up. We had a manager that didn't know how to manage us, and we were exhausted. We were literally exhausted. I mean, it just never stopped for us. And so we needed a rest. And then we were in Hollywood, so we were kind of on each other's nerves. And then we kind of had a falling out. We did a show in Vegas, and Jam and I had a falling out. It was just like, he was so tense. It was just like, we have fun. We'd hit the stage and everything would just disappear. And we were like, wow, we were at one with the audience. Everything was great. But then afterwards, it was like, we were so exhausted, this and that. He was like, I ran out and I bought an acoustic guitar. And that was kind of the beginnings of where I started feeling I wanted to do something more musical, and I wanted Cats and Boots. And we even did some pre-production rehearsals where we brought in sax players and things like that. We wanted a keyboard player in the band, and we wanted to mix it up and become a more musical band. And to hear what that would have sounded like, you can go to my solo record, Ellis Island, because Ohashi he was a writer on that. And in particular, there's a song called The Edge. And so anyways, in Vegas, I got on the bus with an acoustic guitar, and Jam got in my face. He goes, "Get that off the bus." And I was, what? I said, I just bought this. And, and then he goes, "Get off the acoustic guitar is not rock and roll." And I was like, "Fuck you." We started fighting, next thing you know, get back to Hollywood, and we're like two brothers mad at each other. And then our manager was, he was siphoning money off of us. And then we had an opportunity, to open for Motley Crue for the girls thing. And then our manager, without telling us he spent all our money, he was just like, "No, you guys need to make another record." I'm like, "Well, this record hasn't even been realized yet," which I was right, because obviously to this day it's a coveted record. And the second record would have been awesome. And there are a lot of tracks that Jam and I started writing that would have made the second record. And then I think eventually it would have evolved into something very dark and bluesy to what more like an Every Sunrise evolution of Cats and Boots, and which is what the Ellis Island solo record is really about.
Very cool.
You know, and then you can hear an R&B influence in there because I was working with Bobby Womack on his record Resurrection, and Bobby and I were, he used to say, Joe, we just do Pisces from Cleveland, but Bobby Womack and I were very, very close. And so musically, I went to school. He showed me a lot of things, and he really blessed my insight on music, you know.
Yeah.
So, but Cats and Boots would have evolved to that point. But instead of taking that route with Cats and Boots, Jam's head wasn't in the right place to become more musical. And so I was attracted to Gary's musicality. And then at first it was James Kotek, the drummer of the Scorpions. Before James, he was, before the Scorps, he was in Kingdom Come.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Very good band. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Amazing band. But, you know, I mean, but then again, it was like, what is the singer's name? He really tried to capitalize on the whole Led Zeppelin thing.
Yeah.
It just steered themselves in a slightly, you know, more, less, less camped way. Than I think that, you know, that they would have risen, they would have been very successful, on their own right, you know, great guitarists and all that. But James and I were really close friends. And in fact, James and Nader and I hung out a lot together. But he was one of my party buddies, and so he was there. But then when, you know, Frankie, if I wasn't doing much or doing a whole lot, there was an opportunity to work with them, and I was just like, Frankie, come with me on Warner Brothers, you know, let's do this. And he just jumped right in, and he jumped in with so much tenacious focus. You know, he really was exactly the perfect drummer for Heavy Bones because he understood how serious I wanted to be about the songwriting. He understood the depth of musicality. He understood the influence of 70s song crafting, and he delivered. And I got to tell you, I mean, in my opinion, it's my band, it's my record, but I think it's the greatest drumming. I think it's Frankie's got the best drumming, the best performances he ever gave. And I think it gave Frankie a chance, and which is what I really wanted to bring out of the band, was to really pull stuff from deep inside of them. Don't worry what other people are doing. Don't, you know, we're going to take this beyond. We're going to take this beyond. We're going to take this to the next level. And we just want to be free to create. And just put us in a room and leave us alone and don't fuck with us and let us write our own songs. I'm not going to worry about singing a song beating heart if it's sounds too mellow and ballady or Hannah, or you know, if I'm writing, if I'm writing 4 a.m. TM, or I'm all those different songs. I'm just not going to worry about it. We're going to write from what we feel. And I think that allowed Frankie to really, because it wasn't like he wasn't playing anybody else's music, but he was originating, but he was hugely influenced by Bonham. And Bonham was an extremely musical drummer. You know, in fact, it was like, you know, Bonham in Ramble On, he plays an Indian tabla, you know, leaves are falling all around, you know, and he's playing like a little Indian tabla. Frankie had wanted to do that. I said, well, let's do a song where he does that. And so Gary is goofing around. He starts playing, you know, this Indian, this, and Frankie's doing the tabla. And I started coming up with these, and it's a song on this record. It's called Friends.
Oh, okay. Yep. I did hear that one too on your website.
What'd you think of it?
It's certainly like you said, acoustic-y sounding, but I liked it. It reminds me, like you said, it's not necessarily a ballad. Like some of these songs are like slower acoustics, but not necessarily ballads though either. And it was only like a minute clip I think you had on your website, but all of the ones that I listened to on your website, I was happy with. Do you have any other kind of like stories like with Cats and Boots, like with the album Kicked and Clawed, like how a certain song was written that you really enjoyed, like telling a story about, or anything like that?
So when you talk about writing songs, Cats and Boots, yeah. So we started with a handful of songs, and the demonstration, the first recording of demonstration was basically us just getting together, rehearsing a few times, coming up with, he had a bunch of riffs he gave me, and I just made up some lyrics, and we went out and played them at the FM station, and I think the Whiskey or something, or whatever, the country club. And we did a couple of shows around LA, and then we went and recorded that record. And so it just became like, that became like the status quo of our writing experience, was to just write songs on the fly. And then we took that record over to Japan, and that record became so successful, our tour took off. And so we never had time. We did so many shows. We were constantly doing live shows. And so we used the live shows, the sound checks, for, songwriting. And then if we found something we liked, we would just stop in the middle of a show and say, "This is a new song, we're going to play a new song," jam and tell the audience, and we would just break right into it. And that's what we did. So, a lot of what Cats and Boots did was in the early, it was like that. And then when we came back from Japan and we were on EMI Records and we were writing Kicked and Clawed, I spent we was a little bit more time sitting down to craft songs. And some of the songs that were most memorable to me was I remember hanging out. There was a period of time I was hanging out a lot with Adriana Smith. She's you guys probably know her as the Rocket Queen from Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
Adriana Smith was good friends with my girlfriend at the time. I don't know. I think they were all mud wrestlers or something at Hollywood. But anyways, she was such a fun girl to hang out with, man. She was just a very poetic girl, and I mean, she was. She really had a big influence on Guns N' Roses, like with your bitch slap rapping and your cocaine tongue, you get nothing done. I mean, that's Adriana, before Guns N' Roses, that was her. And, Paradise City and all of that. I mean, that's Adriana, that's her hanging out, whatever they're doing, and hanging out with, Axel and Wes Arkeen and all that. But she was hanging out at my apartment a lot whenever, and so I remember a couple of times, this was back, we had the phones that you actually picked up and it had the cord and it rang. But I remember she would call me, and I was working on some melodies, and it would turn out to be Whip It Out. And so she just rang me from the buzzer down in there. She came up to my apartment, but she rang and I picked it up. And she goes, "Joel," she goes, "you'll never be a paper rose or the owner of a lonely telephone. Can I come up?" And I'm just like, I'm like, "Yeah." So I was just like, as she was coming up in the elevator, I said, "Wait a minute, that's kind of cool." So I wrote that down, and those are like the opening lines to Whip It Out. You'll never be a paper rose, meaning, you're out, you're the real thing, or the owner of a lonely telephone. Hey, let's hang, whatever. But so she came up, and we were writing songs, and it got to be about 3 or 4 in the morning, and I was listening to it was actually Every Sunrise picked up, because we were messing around with different blues riffs, and just kind of, I don't know, we had a recording of a rehearsal, or maybe it was live, but it just like dun, 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 dun. And then actually, like, the band's kind of went to stop, because I'm like, I don't know, what are we gonna play next? Well, that became the intro to Every Sunrise, and so then we turned that into a melody. But I was thinking about my influence was Janis Joplin's Summertime, her version of Summertime. And so that's initially where I was thinking, like, I want that feel in this song. And so, yeah, so Every Sunrise was inspired vocally from Janis Joplin's Summertime. That's just the vibe, not the words or anything like that, or the meaning, but that sultry vibe that goes over it. And that kind of, so it was kind of, mystical. But she was there with me, and I remember that. And what's really cool about Every Sunrise is that, but that song kind of evolved on its own. It started as just nothing, like a mistake, and then it turned into this, and then it was like, let's play this, and we rehearsed it, and this we just created this kind of, like a waltz groove. It's actually a waltz, you think about it, right? So we got into the studio with it, and we were playing around, and we got that recorded, but the lyrics came to me that night, you know, with Adriana, and we were just, she didn't help me. She didn't come up with any of those lyrics, but she was just sitting there going, that's brilliant. Like, oh, like, yeah, like, you know, and so it was like, it kept me going and kept, you know, she kept my juices flowing to where I could actually, you know, I'll wait for, because the sun was getting ready to come up, you know, it's like I'll wait for every sunrise. Cause, you know, in LA, you start to see, you know, it's dark and then you just start to see this pale blue light.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'll wait for every sunrise. And being inspired by the Beatles, the way they wrote songs, it was kind of like, well, we'll just write like yesterday began as ham and eggs, you know, ham and eggs, you know. And so I was like, all right, we'll wait for every sunrise, but it became that way. And then, so we got into it, and we were, you know, Jam was running over some ideas. He didn't know what he was going to play for the solo. And this was really kind of cool. So I'm sitting in, we were at the old Warner Brothers studio. I'm sitting next to Garth Richardson at the, you know, and we've got his amp, and he's out there. And I actually have a photograph of him sitting out there, and he's just playing his guitar, trying to get a sound on his amps. And we've got all the mics in the room. His amps and his cabinets are mic'd up. And I said, you know, if he thinks about this, then it's just gonna, you know, this is a really special song, and the groove and everything. And so Garth goes, well, let's get, you know, like, okay, let's run a couple test pads. So the very first one, when he hit it, he was just going to run through and practice a few licks, what he wanted to do. And I said, just record this. And Garth said, all right. So he hit record, and he played the very first thing Jam was, he was just jamming. And that's the solo, note for note, no cuts, no nothing. And it was the very first thing. And then he sat there for like another, you know, another hour playing different takes, and he must have recorded, you know, at least a dozen different guitar takes. But we just said, nope, 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 nope. It's a beautiful mistake.
Yeah, exactly. Joe, I have a couple quick questions here, rapid fire questions, if you will, for you. So first, what was your favorite song from either Cats and Boots or Heavy Bones that you loved to play live?
Well, hands down, Every Sunrise.
Okay.
Cats and Boots. And the reason is live is because we always went out and we always opened with Coast to Coast, you know, and it was kind of cool because Coast to Coast allowed me to get out there and take my voice from one level and then go up. And I could always tell how good I was going to be able to sing that night, was how well I could hit, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So it's an urban assault and bourbon, you know, and then it goes right into, I forget my own lyrics, you know. You can bring your friends along. So if, you know, I knew how smooth that note went, you know, as to how the whole rest of the night was going to go. But as we got warmed up and the set got heated up, for me, we were molten. And then we went into that blues song. So, and then there was another one that I'm going to release as a live version. It was called All of Heaven's Love. And so, and it's a lot like, it's a little bit more bluesy, but it's a very cool song. It's similar to Every Sunrise, but Every Sunrise is my favorite song. Okay. And that one, and Whip It Out. And of course, Monkey. You know, Chuck and Sally, we were just goofing around. Some songs made the record, like Bad Boys, and we were just goofing around. It was kind of like I was actually making fun of people who sang cliche lyrics. I was like, oh, Bad Boys, you know, Bad Boys. You know, it's kind of like, oh, that was like the big 80s thing. And then all of a sudden, it, you know, it ended up being part of the record. And I was like, oh, shit. But, you know, but yeah. And then Heavy Bones, 4AMTM really holds a special place in my heart. It's just that groove just hits something inside of me. And I think it's just really a great song. And the way that it just came out of Gary and I, just, it was almost like the song almost wrote itself. And it's funny because 4AMTM, it stands for, you know, at 4 a.m., I think that's when we're at an exact 180 from the sun's energy, and we're actually absorbing, you know, the peaceful, creative, feminine energy from the universe to come in, and it opens up your creative center. And it's real similar to transcendental meditation. So it's at, you know, 4AMTM. The energy of the world becomes transcendental, you know, and so it's that the lyrics play on that. And so it's like when I'm talking and when I'm singing in the chorus with 4 a.m., I'm saying, you know, in the night she comes to sweeping me off my feet. you know, I'm kind of you know, I'm making reference to creativity and the universe energy, that the feminine energy of the universe that opens up your creative centers, you know, and your chakras. And that's that's the girl, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, all hell fire couldn't make her a liar, meaning that, you know, on the other side of the planet, you had all hell fire, you had the sun. And the sun was beating down on the earth, but on that side of the earth, it's like the dark side of the moon, just like with Pink Floyd, right?
Right, right.
So 4 a.m. has that's the beautiful energy. You know, it's like Sigmund Freud said, you know, that there's masculine and feminine energy in everything, you know.
Yes.
And all of music and artistry is definitely a feminine energy, and manufacturing and calculation is definitely masculine as energy. You know, the sun, the heat, that's masculine energy, and the moon and the stars, that's feminine energy. You know, the rocks, the mountain, the land, that's masculine. The sea, the ocean, it's, you know, that's feminine energy. You know, men and women, you know, but
Right, yeah.
creative, you know, artists and politicians, you know.
All right, cool. Yeah, because that was actually one of the other questions I was thinking about asking, like, what does 4AMTM stand for? So
A lot of
thank you for
people ask
answer that, you know. So but no, and then
I wish more people would ask that, because I think I wish people would really look at music and art that way, you know.
Okay, yeah, because I kind of thought that would have been like a common question, you know, 4AMTM. What does that exactly stand for? But that's a great answer. I like that. So and then one of these
Is what it
other
is.
yeah, one of these other rapid questions is what exactly for new metal bands, new rock bands, or just any music artists in general, what do you have any advice coming from, because you've been here for in the music business for decades and it changes every decade, every 5 years. Recently it seems like stuff's changing so much so quickly. Do you have any kind of advice for young musicians and bands out there?
Um, yeah, you know, I mean, first of all, I would say, you know, school yourself off your you know, your more traditional influences. Obviously, I mean, don't look at don't develop your art based on who's popular today. You know, go all the way back, because all great music is all great music. I mean,
Hmm.
and then find little pieces of yourself and everything that has led up to this point, and then find out how it was made, and learn about the fact that, I mean, what is music? Music is a creative process. So don't emulate, create, you know.
Hmm.
And I would definitely say that I would definitely go back. I mean, look at for a lot of great artists. I mean, ever since the 60s, you know, they were influenced by the way that you know, that George Martin and the Beatles, you know, changed the face of music. I mean, you know, there were bands like the Beach Boys that just stopped dead in their tracks. You know, they were at the height of surf world music, whatever, I don't know, but stopped dead in their tracks, and they said, how are we going to compete with this? And they, you know, learn. But I mean, I think that it's so powerful, that the methodologies of manipulating the physics of music, you know, the sound, you know,
Hmm.
go back to the analog days, go back and figure out what it is that you're hearing, you know, and the frequencies, and figure out how to manipulate that. It's like David Bowie, you know, someone gives you a keyboard, you know, a new keyboard, you know, fuck it up before you record with it, you know. And you know, so yeah, I would say innovate. I would say, look, you know, go back and look in the past, and pull up, you know, the little pieces of yourself that you see in the past, and artists, and figure out how they did things, and try to bring that into today's world, because there's a lot that's being lost. I think um I think there's a lot of cool things that you can do with digital music, but that's not really me, and I don't think that that lends itself, because, you know, a lot of the greatest music, the classic music of all time, you know, there's a lot of mistakes. I mean, you hear David Gilmour talk about Pink Floyd, and, you know, Dark Side of the Moon seems like such an amazing masterpiece, but he said there's like four Dark Side of the Moons that ended up on the cutting room floor. And you know, so don't be afraid to experiment, and learn the process, and realize that everybody's, you know, a lot of new artists are out there striving to be great themselves. You know, I don't know, I don't know who's out there doing what, you know, but you know, all the little girls want to be Taylor Swift or whatever, but you know, learn how to work with other artists, learn about chemistry between artists, and learn how a producer, you know, the real purpose of a producer is to keep you from being too close to your music. You know, I've seen a lot of artists shoot themselves in the foot because they're a great guitar player, but they also want to be the singer, but they're not a special singer, you know, or vice versa. So it's like, you know, look back at bands like Queen, right? You got 4 guys that made that immense amount of the Beatles, whatever, but it's a chemistry. So learn the value of the chemistry, and don't try to, you know, don't try to be everything. Just try to be a part of that and be great. And write and create for the music, for the record. Don't write and create you know, for what you think is popular out there, and try not to get too close. Welcome the involvement of a producer, somebody, but make sure he's a good one. You know, he's motivated by somebody who loves your music and talent, but has a vision right along with you, and you share the same vision, and then step back. And once you establish that you and this 5th Beatle, you know, share a vision, then allow that chemistry to take shape and allow the music to take its own life and go forward, like just like Anna or Summers in the Rain.
Right.
You know, let the music, you know, give it life, and then let it grow up and live its own course. And, you know, same thing for your musical spirit. You try to be something different, try to make it sound different, and go back to the past and try to.
That's a perfect answer, I think. And that's what we are missing, I think, a lot in the modern times of rock and metal specifically as well. So, but Joel, that's pretty much all I have for you, my man. We've been here a long time. You're more than welcome to come back and give us more stories. We're more than happy. This is the perfect channel for you for that. So, like I said, to talk to you, talk about these albums, it's been a big part of my upbringing, you know, so very, very happy to talk about them and talk to you. Joel, can you kind of tell everyone where they can find you at online?
Yes, thank you for asking. Please go to my website, to my store, to buy everything, because you need to support your local artist. And when it's not out there, when it is out there, we're not really making the money. So come to joelellismusic.com, and you can get everything there, the merch, the music, the downloads, and you can actually you can contact me and email me if you want. And so just go to joelellismusic.com. Pretty simple. And take a look at what's going on there.
Sounds good. And I will put all the links for Joel and his website and stuff and all his social media and everything down below in the description box as well. But Joel, I think we kind of covered a lot of ground here. Certainly we could have covered a little bit more ground. We'll save that for next time now.
Okay, let's have a next time.
Sure. All right, sounds good, my man. Thank you again for coming on, Joel.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And for anybody watching, I mean, go in and subscribe, join my email list, and we'll send you out all kind of fun stuff. We'll keep it fun.
Good deal. Good deal.
Yeah, thanks so much, Crash. It's been a great show.
Okay, yeah, it's been great, man. Like I said earlier, these albums, your voice has been a part ever since I was in high school on up, and the last 15 years or so, and it's been awesome. It's awesome to talk to you, my man. Having an OG from the era on the show.
Yeah, right. The real thing. Right? That's just what they say when we get old, you know. Even old.
Yeah, a nice way to put it, right? That's just a nice way to put it.
No, I get what you're saying though. For real, there are a lot of OGs. You know,
good deal.
I learned from the OGs.
There you go. Yep, there you go. All right, man. So, guys, thank you for watching the Crash Course Metal Show. Click subscribe, comment, say hi to Joel. Hit the like button. That helps us out here. So, and please go listen to Cats and Boots and Heavy Bones, and also the new stuff that Joel released. And guys, until next time, stay out of that collateral damage. Thank you for watching the Crash Course Metal Show. For Joel Ellis, I'm Trevor Crash Knight. We'll see you guys later.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
Yeah, I wrote that. that. It's called I Want to Rock Your Body. And then in parentheses it says to the break of dawn.